Chris has spent as much time on the phone with other people as he has with me, then he's had no time to do anything. So
We'll find out.
okay, so that's
We have a few more minutes, Mr. McLaughlin. We'll get started.
that works for me.
That is yours.
Okay.
I forget how close the neighbors are. That's a. I worry so much about the sound, loudness of the dome. How in here is it just me?
The only
YouTube is live, and I will now officially start the webinar.
Right, yeah. No, that's what I was trying to figure out. I guess here we go. Just across the street here.
That's the
Rayburn.
VDOT building over there.
And the Zoom webinar is now live.
Thank you, sir.
Here's the set for you, Chris. This is interesting. So the board voted on the special exception. Well, we did. And this about the propane.
2000. That was back in 2000.
Oh, it's because they're changing it, right?
From 2 to 4.
Yeah, it's all of it from 1997. Yep.
One's ready to go in, the other one needs to go in within 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
You are ready when you are, sir.
Okay, we live?
Yes.
All right, we'll call to order the January 13th, 2021 Rockbridge County Planning Commission. Need to have a roll call since some of us are here on Zoom. Commission member Hennis,
Here.
Commission member Hines,
Here.
Commission member Lucas,
Here.
Commission member Whitmore. Waved.
Here.
We got it. And Commission member McLaughlin is present. While the room is open to the public due to the size of the meeting room and the social distancing requirements, no more than 10 attendees will be allowed into the room at one time per the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia Executive Order 63. All persons over the age of 10 that do not have precluding medical conditions are asked to wear face coverings. We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. At that time, the public is welcome to make comments unrelated to any of the public hearings that are on the agenda tonight. Comments related to the public hearing should be held until that item is discussed and the public hearing is open. We will do our best to take citizen comments remotely. There are 2 options for citizens to offer comment. 1, to join the Rockbridge County Planning Commission Zoom webinar. That link is available to the county on the county website to copy into the address line on your browser. Second, you could join by telephone. You may dial in to one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Planning Commission YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature, and you can press the raise hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone. So at this time, we'll proceed with the meeting. First of all, citizen comments on anything not on tonight's agenda. And I'll remind everyone that in addition to participating by Zoom or telephone, written citizen comments have been solicited for receipt by way of email, U.S. mail, and Dropbox located at the front entrance of the County Administration Building and by way of email. I will now open the floor to any citizen comments for any items not on the agenda. Staff, do we have anybody physically present?
No, sir.
Do we have any written comments?
No, sir.
Do we have anyone who wishes to make citizen comments via Zoom or by phone?
No, sir. We have 2 attendees, but they are both applicants.
All right.
I do have one attendee with a hand raised, Joe Harris.
All right. Ms. Harris is the first applicant, but she may have a citizen comment. So we'll.
Okay,
It
so we
looks like
can,
she lowered the hand. So if she's
Okay.
only wanting to speak for the public hearing, or if
Perfect.
she wants to make a citizen comment, she could raise her hand back and I'll allow her to speak.
Perfect.
okay. So if there are no comments, further comments at this point, we will go ahead and close that portion of the meeting. So citizen comments section is done. The next item on the agenda is the adoption for the 2021 Planning Commission meeting schedule, which was found in our packet. And Chris, do you want to comment? on
This
any
is
of
just
that?
some bookkeeping items. The next 2 items are somewhat bookkeeping items. The first one is at the first meeting of the calendar year, we always adopt the schedule for the upcoming Planning Commission meetings. They are still scheduled to fall on the second Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. and the schedule reflects that.
Are there any board members that wish to change that? If so, we'll go ahead and get through this. If someone would make a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the calendar as presented.
I second.
We have a motion seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And the next item is the election of officers. I am more than willing to step down if somebody wishes to step up. So I'll go through the election process. So anybody want to make a recommendation?
And so just to chime in, the current election of all this is again a bookkeeping beginning of calendar year. The first, the currently chair is, of course, Lee McLaughlin. Vice chair is Melissa Hennis, and I serve as the secretary. So this can be done as all one motion or individual motions, however y'all see fit.
I make a motion that we accept the planning commission officers as presented.
I second.
All right, we have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. I guess it carries. Doggone it. Okay. Well, thank you all for that confidence. Melissa, thank you for continuing to do the vice chair. All right, moving on to approval of the October 14th minutes. Just please note that the staff were emailed the PC members, the Planning Commission members, a revised set of the minutes on January 11th. I'm assuming everybody got those. Any comments, corrections?
Because I wasn't here, I don't feel like I can make a motion to approve them because I don't know.
Somebody on the Zoom want to step forward?
I make a motion. Go ahead, Kim.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it then.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Motion carries. Next, Board of Supervisor report.
I do not have a report for you this month.
Okay. Next on the agenda, Douglas and Joanna Harris of Alton Lane. We have a public hearing application for an amendment to an existing special exception permit, Kenneland Agricultural Transitional AT zoning district. So staff, Chris, do you want to go ahead and?
Yes, I'll do a a brief PowerPoint presentation reviewing the application, and then I will turn it over to Joanna Harris. Stefan is the IT director. I don't think I'm on attendees here down here, and I've right-clicked. The only option I have for Ms. Harris is to chat or not. I don't think I have the ability to promote her to a panelist.
I'll go ahead and promote her now.
Perfect. Ms. Harris, you'll be promoted to a panelist here shortly. So with that, let me share my screen. Let me attempt to share my screen. All right. This is a public hearing for a special exception to amend an existing special exception conditions associated with the existing special exception for Douglas and Joanna Harris for a kennel in the agricultural transitional zone. Briefly, just to review the surrounding zoning, the gray on the map to the south of the properties is in general industrial. The light pink, which is the Harris property as well, and then the Horse Center to the east is agricultural transitional. The purple to the north or to the rear of the property is planned business. That's, of course, the Dominion energy facility there. The Harris property is outlined in orange and is identified as tax map numbers 61-3-7 that consist of 0.756 acres, and then 61-3-8 that consist of 0.561 acres. A little bit about the special exception process or the background here. Douglas and Joanna Harris have made an application to amend the existing special exception associated with the existing kennel located at 272 Alphen Lane, Lexington, Virginia, 24450. Again, the property is located in the agricultural transitional district, and per section 603B.03-4 of the regulations, commercial kennels are used by special exception. Just thought it'd be beneficial to review the definition of a commercial kennel. That is per section 302.116. A kennel is defined as any location where the raising, grooming, caring for, or boarding of dogs, cats, or other small animals for commercial purposes is carried on. The original special exception permit and associated conditions were approved by the Board of Supervisors on April 23rd, 2018. Conditions associated with the current special exception permit limit the use to dog grooming and training, with no more than 4 dogs allowed on the property at one time for grooming and no more than 2 dogs allowed on the property at one time for training. The current conditions also prohibit the overnight boarding and limit the hours of operation to 8 a.m. through 6 p.m. The purpose of the pending application, the public hearing tonight, is to amend the existing special exception to allow for overnight boarding of dogs and cats and to increase the number and type of animals permitted. Per the written description of plan, the Harrises would like the ability to provide overnight boarding of dogs and cats and increase the number of dogs and expand the services to include cats to a total of 6 dogs and or cats for grooming or training at one time. So for discussion purposes, per the request, the conditions would have to be modified to include, and what staff has done here is just taken the existing special exception conditions and either eliminated or modified them per this request. So number 1 would be the business shall be limited to grooming, training, and overnight boarding for dogs and cats. Number 2, no more than a total of 5 dogs and or cats allowed on the property at one time for overnight boarding. Number 3, no more than a total of 6 dogs and or cats allowed on the property at one time for grooming or training. And number 4, the hours of operation for the grooming and training services will remain the same, be limited to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. With that, I would like to turn it over. I'll stop sharing my screen. Bear with me. Stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Miss Joanne Harris, the applicant. Miss Harris, you are muted, I believe, but you have the floor.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thanks for having me this evening. I know that we had been rezoned a couple of years ago. At that time, me and my husband still were owning and operating another restaurant. So I was only doing this part-time. Since then, we have sold the restaurant, Foothill Mamas, and I'm doing dogs and cats full-time now. And I'm looking just to be able to increase my business flow here and being able to put up a business to allow overnight boarding along with my training and grooming.
Okay, are there, Ms. Harris, are you ready for questions? Or do we
Yes.
open that, or do we open that up to,
Either order. If y'all have questions now, or it may be beneficial to go ahead and open up the public hearing and
Let's-
then.
yeah, let's go ahead and do the public hearing and then we'll take questions from staff once that's done. Okay, so at this time, we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone physically present who would like to speak?
No, sir.
We'll now take comments by way of computer and phone. At this time, I'll ask staff if there are any citizens that would like to make comments from Zoom verbal, hands raised.
No, sir. There does not appear to be any.
Are there any Zoom texts?
No, sir.
How about phones?
No, sir.
Okay. So if there are no further comments, then we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission. Any questions from anyone?
Did any of the neighbors have any concerns or complaints that came up, or
No, ma'am.
have the Harrises spoken with the neighbors?
Yes, at the original meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Harris, I did ask if they had discussed the proposal with their neighbors, and they informed me that they had discussed it with the neighbors. And I think that's part of not hearing them from. Is that correct, Ms. Harris?
That is correct. We have physically spoken to all of our neighbors around here, and nobody has an issue of what's going on.
How about on I'm not sure which side it would be. If I'm looking at the paper of the hand drawn that you had given us, it would be on the left side or the west side of that, between your nearest neighbor, opposite the Horse Center and below the Dominion Power. Are there any is there any vegetative screening there that would help any problems maybe associated with having more animals on premise?
Yeah. Yes, between our house and the next door neighbor, Francis Straub, it also has the Dominion power where all their vehicles pull in. So there is hedges between our house and the neighbor's house because of Dominion's powered driveway.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I think considering that, the zoning surrounding them, I don't have any problems with these amendments to the special exception. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. Make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the amended special exception permit for revised conditions for a commercial kennel in the Agricultural Transitional District, AT, at 272 Alphen Lane in the Walkers Creek Magisterial District, identified as tax map number 61-3-7 and 61-3-8, be approved with the following conditions. 1, the business shall be limited to grooming, training, and overnight boarding for dogs and cats. 2, no more than a total of 5 dogs and or cats allowed on the property at one time for overnight boarding. 3, no more than a total of 6 dogs and or cats allowed on the property at one time for grooming or training. 4, the hours of operation for grooming and training services shall be limited to 8 a.m. through 6 p.m.
We have a motion.
I second.
We have a second. Call for the vote. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on now, the Rockbridge Farmers Co-op, Inc., Yellow Rail Line, public hearing, application for an amendment to an existing special exceptions permit with propane storage facility in the general B1 zoning district. Mr. Whitmore, you have a statement? Mr.
Yes,
Whitmore?
I hereby abstain from all matters, discussions, or voting related to the application for an amended special exception permit by the Rockbridge Farmers Cooperative, Inc. My disclosure statement required under the Conflict of Interest Act is on file with the Secretary of the Planning Commission.
All right, thank you, Mr. Whitmore. So at this time, we're going to ask staff to go ahead and review the project.
Yes. And again, Stefan, if you could promote Mr. Jason Black and Mr. Reeves Whitmore to panelists, I will start my presentation.
They have been promoted.
All right, bear with me here. I think I have to pull this one up. And Stefan, so I am attempting to share my screen, but I'm not. Oh, sorry, I got it. All right, everyone should be able to see this one via PowerPoint. Perfect. Again, this is a amendment to an existing special exception permit. In this particular case, it's for the Rockbridge County Cooperative Incorporated application for a special exception for a propane facility in the general business B1 zoning district. Again, just to review the area zoning, the light pink is the agricultural transitional zoning district. The darker red is the general business. The property is outlined in magenta in this case, identified as 33 Yellow Rail Lane, Lexington, Virginia. Further identified as tax map 62-A-36, and it consists of 4.424 acres per tax records. Mr. Jason Black and Mr. Wilson Whitmore. Mr. Wilson Whitmore is the general manager of the Rockbridge County Farmers Co-op, again, 33 Yellow Rail Lane, Lexington, Virginia, applying to amend an existing special exception permit in order to add two 30,000-gallon propane storage tanks. The property is located in the general business B1 zoning district and per section 605.03-17 of the regulations. Propane storage facilities greater than 500 gallons are used by special exception. The original special exception permit was approved with conditions by the Board of Supervisors on June 23rd, 1997. Conditions associated with the current special exception permit include planting a staggered double row of 5-foot white pines along the drive-in property line, security lighting directed down as to not impact the drive-in, landscaping consistent with the corridor study as shown on the site plan prepared by Blackwell Engineer, but not intended to screen the front of the facility. The current application has been made to add two 30,000-gallon propane storage tanks on site. A revised site plan has been submitted along with the special exception application. The site plan shows the proposed location of the two propane tanks and the existing landscaping as described in the first application. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Jason Black with the co-op and Mr. Wilson Whitmore, I believe. Jason, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you well. You have the floor.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Looks straightforward to me.
Yeah, just want to make sure, how is the vegetative stream between you and the drive-in theater, the Halls drive-in, is that being maintained? And that's going to be part of the conditions, but I just want to make sure it's in good shape right now.
Yeah, those trees are fairly mature. They were planted in, I believe, 97 or early 98 when we installed the original storage tanks.
Are they growing so much that they're have lost a little bit of their screening? Or are they still low and bushy and
I think they are fairly bushy. I work at the main office. I don't pay that much attention to it, Lee, to be honest with you. I'm sorry. But I think they're fairly in good shape and fairly bushy.
And I would agree with that statement with meeting them on site, and of course being a patron of the drive-in, it does provide a buffer.
just want to make sure we have enough buffer there for them. All right. If there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. So if there's anyone physically present who would like to speak, staff?
No, sir.
And we'll go to the, by way of computer and phone. Is there anybody on Zoom verbal?
And I will stop sharing my screen. No, we have one other attendee online, and he is here for the next application. So no one via Zoom that is raised hands or in the chat room there.
Okay, and no phone list.
And no phone list, no, sir.
Okay. Well, if there are no comments, then we will go ahead and public hearing is now closed. Back to the Planning Commission. Are there any other questions for Mr. Black?
I don't have any. I'm with Melissa on this one. It's pretty well cut and dry. And like Chris said, when you do go to the drive-in, I haven't gone this year, but when you do drive by there, it's the trees are blocking it fairly well.
All right. Any other? Call for motion?
Make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the amended special exception permit for revised conditions to add two 30,000-gallon propane storage tanks in the General Business District B1 at 77 Yellow Rail Lane in the Walkers Creek Magisterial District, identified as tax map number 62-A-36, be approved with the following conditions. 1, substantial compliance with the plan prepared by Blackwell Engineering dated December 2020. 2, the fourth 30,000-gallon propane tank to be installed within 2 years of the date of approval. 3, existing landscaping to be maintained in healthy condition.
We have a motion and we have a second. Calling for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
I think I saw Kimberly's hand. Okay, motion carries. Mr. Whitmore had to recuse himself. So motion carries, and we'll move on to the next item. This is David Rayburn of Old Chapel Road, public hearing application for a special exception permit to develop a private non-commercial landing strip in the agricultural general use, the A2 zoning district. And turn it back to Chris.
Yes, and again, Stefan, if you could promote Mr. David Rayburn to a panelist, I will get started on mine. Hopefully I can. All right, everyone can see the screen. This is one that's not an amendment to it. This is a new application for a special exception for a private non-commercial landing strip in the agricultural and general use districts. That's the A2 zoning district. The area zoning map in this case is fairly simple. It's one color. That's white. The surrounding Mr. Rayburn, Mr. and Mrs. Rayburn's property is zoned agricultural, and the surrounding area, as you can see, is also agricultural. That would be the A2 zoning district. The property that is in the application is identified as tax map 50-A-58. That consists of 163.339 acres per tax records. It's also worth noting that Mr. and Mrs. Rayburn also own the adjacent tracts towards the east that consist of 92.242 acres per tax records. Per the special exception application itself, Mr. David Rayburn, 665 Old Chapel Road, Fairfield, Virginia, 24435, has applied for a special exception to permit to develop a private non-commercial landing strip on the property. Again, the property is further identified as tax map number 50-A-58. Property is located in the A2 zoning district, and per section 603.03-4, private non-commercial landing strips are used by special exception. The proposed landing strip is located on the western portion of the property. And again, in addition to tax map number 50-A-58, David and Susan Rayburn own additional 92.2 acres to the east. As described in the written description of plans, the proposed landing strip is a one-way strip, meaning that the aircraft will land and then the aircraft will be turned around and take off in the same direction. The approach will be from the east to the west, and then the aircraft will be turned around and depart or take off to the east. The grass field outline is approximately 120 feet from the property line to the west, and the proposed landing strip is approximately 200 feet from that property line. The distance from the edge of the proposed landing strip to the easternmost property line is approximately 1 mile, slightly less than 1 mile, meaning that the takeoff and landings will be over the Rayburn properties. Mr. Rayburn has stated that the landing strip will be primarily used for one aircraft, but has requested the permit include a permission for a second aircraft on the proposed landing strip. Per section 714.08, all proposed sites shall be reviewed by the FFA, Federal Aviation Administrator, the Virginia Department of Aviation, and the Virginia Department of Transportation. In an email from Alton Jordan, Airport Engineer, Security and Facilities Section with the Department, Virginia Department of Aviation, he stated, quote, quote, per the Code of Virginia 24 VAC 5-20-170, private airports or landing areas, the Department of Aviation only regulates registering and or licensing of private landing areas, and examples given is airport, heliports, seaplane base within the Commonwealth. We do not have jurisdiction to approve or deny an aircraft operation, as airspace is regulated federally, and therefore final determination is fulfilled by a aeronautical study conducted by the FFA, Federal Aviation Administration, under provisions Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 157. The final analysis provided to the said owner as a notice of airport airspace analysis determination by the FFA. And then this is extending that quote, says, based on my experience and brief review, I do not have any objection to the requested flight pattern or approach presented by Mr. Rayburn. The Department of Aviation will, however, yield to final approval by the FFA, end quote. Any approvals will be contingent on FFA approval. Per section 714-13 of the Rockbridge County Land Development Regulations, the following factors may be considered in determining whether it issue a special exception permit. Number one is number of expected users and aircraft and the type of aircraft. Number two, flight paths. Number three, setbacks from property lines. Number four, proximity of the landing strip to residential or historical structures and residential or historical boundaries. District boundaries. Number five, nature of the uses on adjacent and nearby properties. Number six, surrounding topography. Number seven, surrounding tree coverage and foliage. Number eight, the design of the hangar and fuel storage area with particular reference to the design characteristics that have an effect of reducing or eliminating visual obtrusiveness or susceptibility of flooding. Number nine, proposed ingress and egress. Number 10, consistency with the comprehensive plan and the purposes to be served by zoning. And number 11, the length of time for the permit. And I should note number 11 is antiquated and dated because we now feel that we cannot have a time frame associated with the length of special exception permits. For discussion purposes, staff has developed draft conditions associated with the landing strip. This will be in addition to the requirements of the landing strip regulations in the Rockbridge County Land Development Regulations. So those those, the requirement for it to be a grass landing strip will stand, the requirement of no public funds. There's a slew of regulations in the ordinance, and this is, again, in addition to those. So again, in addition to the existing ordinance, the current draft conditions are number one, no more than 2 planes are permitted at the ground at any given time. Number 2, the location of the landing strip is shown below. And I should note that the shown below is the same diagram that's on the lower right-hand corner. That will be incorporated into the conditions. That's a diagram that Mr. Rayburn had drafted and submitted with the application. So again, to repeat number 2, the location of the landing strip is shown below, comma, with the landing strip being no closer than 200 feet to the property to the west. That's tax map number 50-A-55. Number 3, the landing strip is limited to 1,200 feet in length and 300 feet in width. And number 4, the final draft condition is the approach of the landing strip shall be from the east to the west, and takeoff shall be from the west to the east as shown on the plan. With that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. David Rayburn to review additional details or answer any questions that the commission members or the public may have. Mr. Rayburn, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Com check. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you well, so you have the floor.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to extend a thanks to Chris Slayton in terms of helping me, shepherding me through this process, as well as the board members that visited earlier, Melissa Hennis and Lee McLaughlin. Thanks to Robert Lucas for the call and the follow-up and the visit by Mr. Hauser to take a look at what I'm doing. I think Chris has covered most of the technical details in terms of the different rules within 714. And I'll be at the end be glad to answer any questions on any one of those. I submitted a document that basically took all the rules and my response to each one of them. But I want to take a step back from that and talk about 3 things that most neighbors would be concerned with. One would be visual obtrusiveness. The second would be physical safety. And the third would be noise. So starting with the visual obtrusiveness, of any of the board members that have visited, if they want to make a comment at the end, they're welcome to do so. But the property is, the airfield itself, it's a field, it's an alfalfa field. It's surrounded on 3 sides, well, 3 sides by trees. When Mr. Hauser visited, his comment was, you have a pretty good tree buffer all the way around it. So unless you flew over the property, you would not be able to see that field. So in addition, there's a conservation easement on the property, and the people that do the conservation easement have already done an assessment. The restrictive covenant that's written into my conservation easement, and their opinion was there was no issue in terms of visually obtrusiveness. But I want to pause for a second and see if Ms. Hennis, Mr. McLaughlin, or Mr. Hauser is in attendance, if they have any comments, and since they were there on site. Any comments?
I thought I was most impressed by how secluded it seemed up there. The only visual thing you could see would be the interstate, and that couldn't see much of that. And I think in the summertime you wouldn't see it at all. You certainly hear the interstate, but how the landing strip is laid out on the property is well thought out, and I think very thoughtful, not only for his safety, but also for the neighbors as well. So I was most impressed by how it's been planned.
I agree with I think with the tree buffers on, basically on 3 sides of it, you couldn't tell it was there, like you said, unless you were flying over it or, got an aerial view of it. So yeah, I think it's definitely secluded.
So any more thoughts or comments in terms of being visually obtrusive? Or go on to the next one?
I'd go on.
Okay, next is physical safety. Chris put up a slide. Chris, I don't know if you can put it back up, that showed the little map with where you would land and where you would take off. So the distance between the field and the northern boundary, there you go. The northern boundary is about 1.1 miles according to the GIS measurement tool. What that does is it gives you a profile that all of the takeoffs and landings are over my property. Now, Mr. McLaughlin, when he was visiting today, said, well, once you've taken off, how high are you when you go off of your property? And the answer to that is somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 feet. Now, the FAA regulates how close an airplane can fly to a person, a vehicle, or a structure. And the rules are as follows. If you're in a metropolitan area, high density, like Lexington, it would be 1,000 feet. If it's in a rural area, it's 500 feet. So the CONOPS that I'm recommending is that by the time I cross my border, I've exceeded the FAA standard by a factor of 3, or you can say I've met the minimum plus 1,000 feet worth of good neighbor margin. So I think there shouldn't be any issue in terms of flying over someone's house and be a concern associated with that. The last one has to do with noise. You know, if I were a neighbor, I would say, is there going to be a lot of noise for this? And what I did is I went to the CDC website. Chris, am I allowed to show a PowerPoint slide?
Yes, yes, sir. Let me stop sharing mine and that will have you the ability to share, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We can see it.
Okay, there's a colorful histogram on the left-hand side. And this is from the CDC website. Now, there's two parts to noise. One is the intensity, how loud is it? And the other is the duration. So starting with intensity, what do you hear on a farm? If you hear a rifle shot, it's about 150 decibels. A chainsaw is 120 decibels. When the helicopter flies into Carilion Hospital, because they're doing a medevac flight, it's about 100 decibels. The trucks going down Interstate 81, when they hit their Jake brake so they can make exit 195 and go to the truck stop, is about 95 decibel. A standard large tractor, farm tractor, is 91 decibel with a mower on the back. And the only input I could find in terms of a propeller-driven airplane, small airplane like the picture Chris showed, is 88 decibels. So the intensity of the sound when it happens is much less than what we already live with day to day. The second component is duration. You think about it. A rifle shot is very intrusive, but it's just momentary. The chainsaw is intermittent. The traffic on Interstate 81 is constant. If I mow that field, which I will, I'll be at 91 decibels for 2 hours or 2.5 hours going in circles till I finish. But the profile on an airplane is much different. You take off, you have a burst of sound, but 60 seconds later, it's a mile away at 1,000 feet in the air. And then 120 seconds later, it's 2 miles away and a quarter mile up. So at that point, you can't hear it at all. The reverse is true when you're landing. So when you're coming in from that northern boundary, descending, you put the airplane in an idle configuration where the motor is just barely running. So you can bleed off the airspeed and the altitude and land on the field. So the only time you make any noise is when you're taking off. And that's much less than what we already live with every day. So I tried to talk to visually obtrusive, the physical safety component, and the noise considerations. So I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions from the panel or the gallery in terms of questions that I can answer.
I think probably, unless somebody has a quick question, I think we'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
I think you got one more. Was that? I think that was 2 of 3.
That was the
No, that was the
that was
third
the that was the third. That was the third. So it was. So we'll go ahead and open up to the public hearing in case Mr. Rayburn needs to answer some questions from the public. Is there anyone physically present who would like to speak?
No, sir.
Are there any Zoom?
Currently no Zoom attendees.
No Zoom attendees, so no Zoom text. Any phone?
No, sir.
Okay, then at this time, we will close the public hearing at this time. So bring it back to the Planning Commission. Anybody have any other questions? I have a couple of comments, but I want to see if there are other questions first. I guess I'd like to thank Mr. Rayburn for his hospitality and his professional tour that he gave. It was really well done. Most impressed by what he was doing. His field is really ag first, is agricultural first. It's a hayfield, will be a hayfield. And so that's also going to limit a little bit of time that he can take off and land prior to the hay season. And also being a grass strip, it is limited to a lot to the weather and those conditions. Also want to comment that the plane that he is flying is a special type plane. And so having a second plane landing there, it would have to be of similar type. There are not many planes that could actually land on a strip that short, if that's what I understood from our conversation today. But I was really most impressed by Mr. Rayburn and what he has proposed. So I'm personally in favor of this.
Agreed. Yeah, he did mention 95% of planes can't use a 1,200-foot runway. So even if it conveys with the property, it would take a special, one of these tiny planes. It's not like you could do commercial planes there.
Are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Rayburn or for the commission?
Okay, are we ready?
All right, I'll call for the motion.
I make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the application for a special exception permit to develop a non-commercial landing strip in the Agricultural and General Uses District A2 on property located at 665 Old Chapel Road, Fairfield, Virginia, 24435, and identified as tax map number 50-A-58 in the Walkers Creek Magisterial District be approved with the following conditions. 1, no more than 2 planes permitted on the ground at any given time. 2, location of the landing strip is shown below, with the landing strip being no closer than 200 feet to the property to the west, tax map number 50-A-55. 3, the landing strip is limited to the 1,200 feet in length and 300 feet in width. 4, the approach to the landing strip shall be from the east to the west, and takeoff shall be from the west to the east as shown on the plan.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. And again, thanks to Mr. Rayburn for exceptional work in the preparation. And thanks to Mr. Sladen and staff for all they did to help with this particular project. Moving on now to next item on the agenda for JBLN Investments LLC on Thoroughbred Circle. We'll have a public hearing application for amendment to the existing proffers associated with the conditional rezoning in the residential mixed R2 zoning district. And Ms. Hennis, you need to make a comment at this
I have
point.
a statement. I hereby abstain from all matters, discussions, or voting related to the application for a proffer amendment by JBLN Investments, and my disclosure statement required under the Conflict of Interest Act is on file with the Secretary of the Planning Commission.
Okay. At this time, we're going to let staff do the presentation. Chris?
Yes. And Mr. Brazel Hamrick is here in attendance. So prior to turning the floor over to him, I'll do again a brief presentation. You can see the screen there. And let me start this slideshow from the beginning. All right, this is a application for a proffer amendment for an earlier rezoning or earlier conditional rezoning, mixed residential district. To review the zoning in the area, the light pink on the map is the agricultural transitional. The dark red is the general business B1. The yellow on the map is general residential. And what I'm calling the darker yellow is the residential mixed. Again, the property that we're talking about is outlined in magenta. That is in the existing residential mix, the R2 zoning district. The property, again, is outlined in magenta, is further identified as tax map 62-33-22 and is 8.608 acres per tax records. Mr. Brazel Hamrick, JBNL Investments LLC, PO Box 103, Mount Sydney, Virginia 24467, has made an application for amendment to proffers associated with a previously approved conditional rezoning in order to continue a cluster subdivision for single-family dwelling lots. Again, the property is further identified as tax map 62-33-22 and consists of 8.608 acres per tax records. The property is located in the mixed residential district and was conditionally rezoned with the acceptance of proffers. The original conditional rezoning was approved by the Board of Supervisors on February 23rd, 2009. The 2009 proffered plan included multifamily development with access including a loop road. The pending application reduces the number of multifamily units and includes 25 lots for single-family dwellings. Access to the single-family dwellings will be off of the northern entrance off of Thoroughbred Circle and will terminate at a cul-de-sac. Last year, a top layer of asphalt was installed to Thoroughbred Circle, and the developer and staff has been in conversation with VDOT, Virginia Department of Transportation, on the final steps required to bring the existing road into state system. The road proposed in this cluster subdivision will be designed to and incorporated into the state system. So this is the current plan. This is the current rezoning plan for the current proposal. The pending application, again, reduces the number of multifamily lots and includes a 25 lot single-family dwellings. Access to, well, I said all that. Access, just to review the plan, previously, if you can see my mouse here, previously it was the same loop road, but the loop road continued on here and then came out the western entrance or the southeastern entrance here. So with that being said, this one is remaining largely the same on this side, but this is the bulk of the change here. As you can see, we're no longer proposing multifamily on both sides of the road. We're proposing 25 clustered lots for single family dwelling. Mr. Brazel Hamrick with JBNLN has submitted a proffer statement that states that the development of the property tax map 62-33-22, for which the application is being made, shall be in substantial compliance with the concept plan developed and prepared by Hammer Engineering, PC, titled JBNL Investments, preliminary plat dated February 24th, 2013, with a revision date of January 12th, 2021. And I should note this, the January 12th, 2021 is slightly different than the information that was included in your package. The only change from the current plan and the plan that was included in your package was the addition of one townhome, bringing the total to 13. And again, referring back to the plan, it was determined that there's a possibility, there's a power line easement that goes through this property, and it was determined that there very well may be additional room for one more townhome on this phase of townhome. So again, the plan that was in your package shows 12 townhomes. The current proffered plan shows 13. Other than that, they're the same plan essentially. With that, I'll leave this up for discussion purposes, the rezoning plan, and turn the application over to turn the floor over to Mr. Brazel Hamrick to review additional details.
Thank you, Chris. I think you pretty much covered it. Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission members, my name is Brazel Hamrick. I'm here asking for permission to change the conditional zoning to the plan that you see, so that I can continue the work that I've been doing out there for the last several years. Basically, the single family dwellings, I believe, will be more successful than the townhouses, and I certainly enjoy putting the product out there that I've been doing, and would like to continue so. And to help facilitate that, I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, I think it would be appropriate at this time to go ahead and open up the public hearing. I don't see anybody physically present, so staff, I guess we don't have that. How about Zoom? On Zoom, are there any Zoom verbal or text?
No no one with their hands raised, and there are no no questions in the chat room, and there are no telephone numbers associated with the public hearing.
Okay, if there are no comments at this time, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to questions or comments from the Planning Commission. I'd like to say that I believe there's a need for this kind of housing in the Rockbridge area, and I think this fits within our planning spirit. Personally, that's where I come from, so I'm in favor of this off the bat. So, but any other comments or questions? Mr. Hamrick from any of the other board members? Ms. Hennis can't comment.
Hey, Lee, I've got this a comment, one, and then a question. A comment, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that it's a good proposal. The housing is good for the area, things like that. So, but got one question. Just looking at it, I know Chris mentioned the right of way for the power line where he's talking about the 13 places, and I know that's not part of our consideration tonight. But the only thing I had a question about was like lot 27, the right of way that goes through there, existing. It's the one, I guess it would be the furthest south. There's a right of way going through there, and if I overlay the two maps that I have here that were in our packet, would there actually be a house on that would be able to fit on that lot 27?
Yes, ma'am. I think the right of way you're speaking of is a gas easement.
Yes.
And yes, I have carefully studied that, and the house that I showed there can fit.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Again, I commend staff for what they have done. So we'll call for a motion. Anybody? Melissa can't do this.
Oh,
That's you, Kimberly.
I know. I got to pull up my email real quick because I have it saved. So, Vicky, let's see here. Let's do it. Got it. I make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the amendment to previously approved proper conditions in the residential mixed R-2 zoning district for the townhomes to detached single-family dwelling for property located on the north side of the intersection of Thoroughbred Circle, Route 750, and Valley Pike Road, Route 645, and identified as tax map number 62-33-22 in the Walkers Creek Magistral District be approved.
Motion has been made. There's a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second calling for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hands raised from Mr. Lucas as well, so the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hamrick, for being here for that. Okay, I've lost my notes.
Mr. Hamrick is not going too terribly far because he is also the next agenda item.
Right,
as well.
so we'll go to the cluster subdivision review. This is not a public hearing, and so if you'll, Chris will review that for us.
And it is appropriate for Ms. Hennis to read
needs to
that
also
statement
make
again.
You want me to reread it? I hereby abstain from all matters, discussions, or voting related to the application for a proper amendment to JBLN Investments, and my disclosure statement required under the Conflict of Interest Act is on file with the Secretary of the Planning Commission.
And that is going to be revised to the subdivision review versus the proper amendment.
Very good.
Yes, ma'am. So I would actually like to just use the same, my last screen, if I can find it. All right, this is a preliminary plat, and in your package you have the actual subdivision plat for the 25 lot cluster subdivision that was just recommended for approval to the Board of Supervisors. So with that, again, Mr. Brazel Hamrick with JB&L Investments LLC has made an application for a 25 lot cluster subdivision. Same property as the last one, identified as the last public hearing, identified as 2062-33-22. The approval of the cluster subdivision will be contingent on the rezoning application. Per section, so what that means is it will be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with the recommendation, but the subdivision itself does not get forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. Per section 712.02-1 of the Land Development Regulations, the implementation and approval of the cluster subdivision and open space preservation shall be done administratively by the Director of Community Development and without a public hearing. In exercising his or her authority pursuant to this section, the Director of Community Development may consult and consider recommendations of the Planning Commission, end quote. Historically, staff, as you know, staff has always reviewed plus the preliminary plat for cluster subdivisions with the Planning Commission and received input. The amount of open space that's proposed with this cluster subdivision exceeds the required amount. The setbacks for the cluster subdivision are proposed as 15-foot front, 5-foot sides, and 20-foot rear. These setbacks are consistent with the existing development in the area. In addition to the successful outcome of the rezoning application, the proffer amendment application, road plans will be required to be submitted to VDOT, and a bond and or letter of credit of the cost of construction will be required prior to the approval of the subdivision plat itself. So with that being said, again, historically, we always allow the Planning Commission, if you'd like to make comment on the proposal, and in this case, the 25 lot cluster subdivision. This is not a public hearing, of course. It's just subdivision review.
A little curious about the traffic flow, the increased traffic flow, probably most off at 645, the Valley Pike. And then throughout the subdivision you got the clusters in there. There are two entrances, one at the southern end, one at the northern end.
Southern end doesn't go through.
It goes through are there two entrances to this?
There's a separate entrance for the townhome portion, which is not a part of the subdivision plat tonight. And then there's a separate entrance for the
I see that.
The previous planning commission, as Chris pointed out, that used to go all the way through, but the previous planning commission had a desire to kind of just split it. That was never taken to a formal step of approval. It was more or less, I met with the planning commission as
Apologies to interrupt. Having trouble hearing. If you could get a little closer to the microphone, please.
Excuse me. Do I need to repeat that?
If you could.
He was asking about the two entrances. The previous planning commission, I met with them just as an informal, basically as a preliminary approval, although no steps were taken to get to approval, and their desire was to separate those roads from so that the townhouses had a separate entrance and the single family had a separate entrance. And I kind of agree with them that it's really two different types of housing product, and it made perfect sense to me.
So, and the traffic flow, I guess I was trying to figure out the traffic flow. And VDOT's all.
It's a very, very low volume, 250 vehicles a day is basically, that VDOT figures 10 trips a day per single family dwelling.
Okay.
So you come down Valley Pike and hang a left and take a right, the first intersection, and another right into your home.
I seem to remember a conversation on this, and there were some concerns with emergency vehicle entrance, exit from, and being able to get into these homes, especially if you had fires, fire trucks having one way in, one way out, and that's it. I seem to remember a little bit of a conversation on that and maybe trying to make it where you could actually loop those roads together is what I kind of remember. I'm thinking it was this, on this plan.
I do not recollect that, but the roadway can accommodate your largest ladder truck. And there's a cul-de-sac there that they can certainly turn around. Your largest ladder truck probably would, probably have to do a 3-point turn, but it can certainly turn around there and will not have to back up.
I just know how it is when you had a fire. There's 10 fire trucks show up. It'll block it up pretty quick, not to mention the 5 rescue units that'll show up. So been there, done that. So the only concern I got.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments?
Just one follow-up to Mr. Lucas's comment is what was the width? I know we reviewed it, but I can't recall. What's the width of the proposed road?
It's 18 feet.
18 feet in width, and then the cul-de-sac is
It's a 30-foot.
a 30-foot cul-de-sac.
Yes.
Okay. And so that will be reviewed and approved by VDOT.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So VDOT has really the say on that. Now, what we're doing tonight is recommending.
No recommendations. It's actually just providing feedback to the Office of Community
Right,
Development.
because you have the,
No motions are required. It's just a period of time to present the project to you and get any feedback.
just clarifying. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay. Mr. Hamrick, thank you very much. So that will take us to the end of our meeting, and we'll take the muzzle off Ms. Hennis, and I might get in trouble later, but. So do we have a meeting motion? Is there anything else, Chris, or any other?
No, just a
other?
few comments. That's all the action items. Just a few comments I did want to make. Of course, we have a new system here. It's it's a whole lot more work for Stefan, IT director, but it has worked out well, and I think it's a better camera system. It's certainly a better microphone system, so we're very appreciative of his work on that. And another thing I'd like to talk with the commissioner as a whole about is the new format. I've mentioned this in the email. Just any positive feedback or negative feedback on the agenda item. Obviously previously, this is a new format for the package. Prior to this package, we always did one memo for all the agenda items. And so piggybacking off of how we sort of do it with the Board of Supervisors, I thought it'd be a good idea to break those up into agenda items. That way, in my opinion, you're not flipping back and forth trying to figure out which one you're working on, and it has a more detailed information, more detailed information in the package.
I appreciated it. This format was so
Yes.
much better for me because you can just go through and you're not back and forth and, well, where were we on the agenda and all that.
Sure.
So I appreciate it.
As a paper flipper, I really appreciate not having to flip as much. So
Okay.
I like it. It does. There's more paper involved, but that's a minor detail.
Sure.
But I appreciated it
Okay,
very much
perfect.
personally. Any other
thumbs up from
comments,
David, I see.
Chris, on that?
Okay, that's really all I had.
I make a motion that we convene or
Adjourn?
adjourn. Yes, we already convened. Adjourn. I make a
Adjourn.
motion that we adjourn.
We have a motion.
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this
Very
meeting
good.
is adjourned. Thanks,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Thank you.
Happy New Year. Be safe. Stay healthy.
Last thing, David Whitmore, if you could get us your statement, obviously, if you want to just put that in mail or email it to us, we'll have it on file.
I did it right before the meeting, so I apologize. I sent it to Vicky.
Oh, I apologize. No, I apologize. I didn't realize you had already signed it and sent it back. So you're
Yeah.
as always, a step ahead of me. Thank you.
Already on the-
Okay, thanks.